Welcome back to the Changemaker podcast. I'm your host, Deke Copenhaver. Today, my guest is Dr. Ralph Turner, who became Wellstar MCG Health's first president in April 2024 and has been instrumental in guiding the hospital's integration with Wellstar Health System. Prior to his current role, Turner served as president of Wellstar's Spalding Medical Center since 2022. Turner has held leadership roles at large, complex healthcare organizations, including MedStar Washington Hospital Center, University of Wisconsin Hospital and Clinics, and Cleveland Clinic. And the list goes on. But Ralph, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Changemaker podcast, hosted by Deke Copenhaver. Deke is the author of The Changemaker, a Forbes publishing book that has reached #1 on Amazon on multiple occasions and in multiple categories like management skills and total quality management. During this podcast, Deke interviews exceptional change-making leaders. Deke currently operates Copenhaver Consulting, where he helps local governments and other public organizations maximize their potential. He's also a sought-after public speaker. We hope that the Changemaker has an impact on you today and that you find takeaways that make you a better leader in your life. Now, here's Deke.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here.
Well, just for our listeners and our viewers, so tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you end up in the field that you're in leadership roles, and end up in Augusta, Georgia?
Deke, that's an interesting and funny question from the answer I'm about to give. So I always say I didn't choose healthcare. Healthcare chose me.
Yeah.
So young kid, graduated high school in Valdosta, Georgia. That's where I'm from, 1986. Looking for something to do. I didn't think I had strong enough academics to go straight into college. I know I didn't have the discipline.
Yeah.
So joined the military. Going into the military, my whole thought process was find something you can do on the outside. Always figured I would go in, do 4 years, come back to Valdosta, go to Valdosta State College at the time. But wondering, as I go to Valdosta State College, how am I going to sustain myself? Because I get some GI Bill money, but South Georgia Medical Center is right there. So I figured I would find a job in the Army that could get me back in South Georgia Medical Center and work there and then go to school at the same time, graduate school, and possibly go back in the military because Air Force ROTC was at Valdosta State College at the time. It had not yet joined the university system of Georgia. So going to the military, looking for a job in healthcare, they had 3 jobs left because it was the end of the fiscal year. Veterinary food inspector, veterinary assistant, or clinical engineer in biomed, fixing medical equipment. The first film I saw about veterinary food inspectors and veterinary assistants, the guy came out with a huge albino python around his neck.
You're like,
I don't do snakes. I don't do snakes. So immediately I got turned off by those two and ended up picking clinical engineer and biomed and fixing hospital equipment for my first job in healthcare. In the military, always working in hospitals. Became a warrant officer. The more senior I became, the more departments from a support services perspective I managed. And by the time I retired, I was managing sort of like an executive level portfolio of support services, facilities, food nutrition services, environmental services, and managed to get a job at Washington Hospital Center. And then the rest is history. Went on my executive career.
Well, we are sure glad that you're here in Augusta with us now. And did you happen to play football in high school?
I did. I played Valdosta Wildcats.
Valdosta's got a great team.
Yes. I always say there's a team in Kentucky that was on their heels about the most winningest football team in the nation.
Yeah.
And they hadn't caught us yet, but we still holding on to title time. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about, we had a nice conversation before coming on here, but I continually say on this show that our nation and frankly our world needs more good leaders now more than ever in every field, in healthcare, in politics, which most people don't associate leadership and politics these days. But what's it like? I mean, we live in such a constantly changing world, and we've just changed administrations, but there have got to be a lot of challenges in being a leader in healthcare.
Absolutely. So I always say my biggest job as far as leading in healthcare is to make sure my folks come to work in an environment where they feel free of coercion, harassment, and they feel safe. If I can get rid of those 3 things in our healthcare environment, then they'll focus on taking care of the patient.
Exactly.
The number one thing that I operate on a daily basis, my basic principle of my servant leadership philosophy, treating people the way I would want to be treated. Even from a healthcare team member, employee point of view, and especially from a patient's point of view. I always make the point when I'm talking to some of our staff that if you came into the hospital and you experienced what that patient experienced, would you like it? If the answer is no, how can we do it better? And I let them tell me, and I make sure they have every tool they need to achieve that level. So it's about empowerment. It's about transforming. It's about letting people understand that their voice is heard and understood. But I always tell them, you got to have, as long as you're doing your part to help us achieve our mission of taking care of people with the highest quality we can provide, I'll do my part and make sure you have everything you need to achieve yours. If you fail at your part, then maybe healthcare is not the route that you need to take. So it's about being fair, firm, but also supporting them day in and day out.
I think you and I are brothers from another mother because we think exactly the same way. But I did a speaking engagement for Wild Wings for their ownership group a number of years ago on building a corporate culture. And so it was 2 hours, but afterwards I told my wife, I'm like, I could have summed that up in just treat everybody the way you want to be treated.
Yep.
And it sounds so simple, but when you get into the corporate world, it sometimes is not. But I've always said, and I bet you agree with this, the leaders, as a leader, you need to set the tone for the people you're serving. And I love that you talked about being a servant leader. I'm hoping that we can raise up a whole new generation of servant leader in every field because we sure need them right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a very close friend of mine. So 21 years in the military, I keep in touch with probably 3 of them. And one of them, even more so. We were talking last night on the phone, and we FaceTime 2 or 3 times a week. He just retired from the Army, a colonel, and now he owns a laundry service. So imagine that, you just transition. But we were talking about the same thing, and I said, my whole key to moving forward in my career is been based on the simple principle of treating people the way I would want to be treated. And he looked at me and he said, Ralph, that's not normal. He said, he said, you say it and you make it sound simple. He said, but that's not the normal thought process. And he said, you learn that from your upbringing. So I was raised by 3 people, my mother, my grandmother, my godmother. My father passed when I was 4. And those 3 women, if either one of them caught me not being respectful, not treating the people the way I think that the way they would want to be treated, they quickly reminded me, be a backhand, a shoe, or whatever they can get their hand on, So it's ingrained in you. And he said, for you to continue along that process, he said, you're an anomaly when you come in and you're at the top level, but you're asking the people who are just walking to your organization, be it cleaning the floor or serving food, what can you do to help them? Because that's how I would want to be thought of. So we're not the norm, as he was saying. No. We're not the norm.
Well, what I'm hoping though is that as we mentor that next generation, that they can turn it around where it is the norm. Yeah. And I have a lot of hope for Gen Z and generations afterwards. But I always say on here, if they can't see it, they can't be it.
Yes.
And they need grownups in their families and business communities leaders that are showing what it looks like to be a true humble servant leader.
Yes.
And I think that we can turn this thing around. But as we were talking before coming on here, that I've really stopped paying attention to what's going on in Washington because I know a lot of people are very frustrated, but I'm like, I cannot do anything about that. Can I mentor a kid in Augusta? Can I work on a political campaign in Augusta? Can I run a business here in Augusta? Yeah, those things we can do, but so many people are so distracted and so frustrated with things they have no control over whatsoever.
Right. I totally agree. It's like you were saying when we were talking earlier, said I wasn't going to watch the news for the next 4 years. You know, and I also had the mindset of, let me worry about the things that I can control. Those are the things I need to worry about. Other things you can be concerned about, but I don't even have a concern until it hits my front door. So what do I mean by my front door? My colleagues that I work with, things that start to impact the Medical College of Georgia and how they get grants and how now, okay, what can I do to help you, David? How can we help change that tide? But on a day-to-day basis, I got to focus on making sure that all 632 beds of my hospital that have patients in them is being taken care of the best that they can be taken care of. And I don't want things to get in the way of that. And how do I focus on that? Making sure that the people that are crossing that threshold to provide that care have everything they need.
Well, it's funny because I still get once monthly precautionary immunotherapy treatment. But so my wife started doing this like a year ago or so. Every time I get it, she brings Chick-fil-A biscuits for everybody that's getting treatment that day. And I'm like, that little act of kindness that you do, and she doesn't want me tooting her horn, but it really hit me the other day. I'm like, you're putting smiles on people's faces that might not have another reason to smile on that day.
Absolutely.
And I tell people it is, we're breaking bread together, and it is God's chicken, so it's always good.
Right. I totally agree. One day, I was walking through the cafeteria, and a young lady was sitting there trying to buy a cup of coffee. She was fumbling in a bag, and she was fumbling. And I just said, I got it. Don't worry about it. And she stood there and just started crying. And it didn't dawn on me that what she was going through at that time, they're taking care of her loved one and just can't find the change she needed to take care of a cup of coffee, just escalated the frustration. And when I paid for it, and she just started crying, and I apologized. I said, I'm sorry. I just wanted to pay for your coffee. I ain't mean for it to upset you that bad. And then she just said, no, thank you. You just don't understand what we've been going through. And then I stopped my day and I sat there and just talked with her for about a half hour. We sat in the cafeteria and just talked, just to let her unload. And I was getting a lot of good information from her. Are we doing what we need to take care of you? Are you getting everything you need? And she was just talking through a whole process. She just wanted to share some of the things that had led up to her husband coming into the facility. She hadn't had a chance to have that download. So for me just to sit there and listen to her for a few minutes, and then when I got back to my office, my whole schedule, my assistant, where you been? You got this person waiting on you, that person waiting on you. And I had to tell her at the time, this is what I was doing, and they take priority. So, it's just those little small act of kindnesses that you just spoke about can really change somebody's day.
It really can. And, that's, to me, God created us to live in communities, and we're all in this life together. And we were talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but somebody asked me one time, if Augusta was a food, what would it be? I said it would be a gumbo, because everybody knows that you can't make good gumbo with only one ingredient.
Right.
But if you bring in all the ingredients, but I think we live in a time where there's an epidemic of loneliness. I was telling somebody this past week that I said, but two things that I think are really good. So my church had Mahjong recently. They had like 100 and something people there. And I'm like, and then pickleball is this community event for all ages. I'm like, will pickleball and Mahjong save the United States of America and bring people together? I don't know. Maybe so.
Right. Mahjong, I still trying to figure that one out. I need to sit and play with some folks sometime to get a good handle of it, because it's growing across the United States.
Oh, it is. Yeah. And, but what I love about both of those group activities are it's literally all ages. They're not expensive activities, so they really are bringing people together. But so we have a new rector at our church, Church of the Good Shepherd, Episcopalian. So he's 38 years old. And his wife is an avid Mahjong player. So I think it was her idea to bring Mahjong to the church. But I'm like, that is so cool. You're bringing hundreds of people here of all ages to, our church to do this. And I never would have thought of that.
Right.
I mean, you and I are 57 years old, so we're not big. I don't know. You play pickleball?
No.
Okay.
No, I had picked up the paddle.
Well, I'm going to have to try that one.
Well, You know, I'm 57, but I always see people a lot older with the pickleball
Oh, yeah.
courts. So I want to say, let me hang on to my youth while I can. I don't know if I want to grab the paddle yet to start joining the retirement crowd.
Well, you know, it's funny though too, and I tell people, so today's St. Patrick's Day.
Yep.
Thus the green tie, and I do have on a green
There
belt.
you go. There you go.
But so downtown Augusta has a huge parade, and it's such a mixture of people and community coming together. And I'm like, I think, and we talked about a friend of mine or a relative of mine that just really gets his worldview from, you know, news reports and all this and talking to people in Washington. I said, if you get out there with the people, you don't feel this huge divide. I mean, people want to come together, but we just need to give them more opportunities. And as you say, just love on people. You know, if we can lead with love in everything we do, the world's going to be a better place.
I totally agree. We have to get off social media.
Yeah.
That's, you know, it's a newfound, now I guess it's about 15, 20 years old, but it's a newfound phenomenon for the young folks who now don't have to get out. They can just sit in a room and twiddle with their thumbs and have these conversations, but they don't understand the impact of the words that's coming from their thumbs actually have on someone. They can't see the social or the empathetic impact it could have on them. It can make them happy. It can make them sad. It can put them in a state of depression, but they can't see it if they're sitting there on their thumbs. And I blame a lot of our issues that come from the increased number of shootings that's taking place, violence in young America that's taking place. People they play the video games, they get on the social media, they chat, they say hurtful things to folks. Folks get in a state of depression to where now they get on drugs.
Yeah.
We need to get back to social environments where, like you said, people are coming together. And it's another way to impress upon positive leadership when you have the younger crowd hanging out with the older crowd, and they can actually see what it means to be respectful to someone. How you can have a conversation with them, and if you hurt someone's feelings, you can see it and say, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that."
Exactly.
On social media, you don't have to. They can't see how they hurt their feelings. You know, it's just a conversation on the thumbs.
Well, you know, I think it was a Pew Research poll recently sampled a bunch of teenagers and said, "What would be the one thing, the one behavior you would like to see your parents change?" Number one, I'd like to see them get off their cell phones and pay more attention to me. Yeah. So it goes back to, you know, if they can't see it, they can't be it.
Right.
And I was speaking at an event in Charleston recently for the Young Presidents Organization, but a gentleman asked me, he said, what's the best time? And this coming from, I've been an uncle since I was 9. I have no kids, but I've had a ton of kids. I mean, mentoring my whole life. But he said, when's the best time? Would it be when there's conflict? I said, I can't tell you for you exactly when it would be, but I said, if you're ever going to engage your kid, make sure there's no cell phones in that room.
Absolutely.
To distract either of the two of you, that you actually have each other undivided attention. And you know, if parents are saying you should stop doing this, but they're clicking away, you know, we've got to be it so they can see it.
I totally agree. We got to lead that example. My wife and I have two. We have two boys. Lorenz is now 27 and Trey is 20. He'll be 25 April 19th. So when every night, unless there was some sporting event we had to be to, or one of them had some practice that ran late, every night we would always meet at the dinner table. Always have dinner together every night. And every night when they come to the dinner table, no phones are allowed.
Yep.
We sit, we eat, and we have a conversation. When we go out to dinner, and it was a perfect example. We were at an Olive Garden one night, and we were sitting there, and we were having a conversation. There was a family sitting right across from us, and the mom, the dad, and all the kids.
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, that's what we will not do.
Yeah.
I said, if we ever get to that point, then that means that you guys are 30 plus. I said, because even when you get out and you come back to visit, you're still not sitting at the table, thumbing on your phones, you know. So that's the social phenomenon of that we're missing. We're missing that interaction from grown-ups to children, teaching them or just having that general conversation to talk about things of how it impacted their day, because too many people are thumbing on the phones. I don't know.
Well, you know, but there too is, I don't like to make total generalizations. I know a lot of those generation, they want to be talked to, they want to be engaged.
Yeah.
But if that's just the norm for you and your friends, but it's like they're hungry for connection.
Yep.
So I don't think the world is irretrievably broken by any means.
Right.
But it's going to take us being intentional and getting. Part of the reason why I got off social media for me, I've got a great niece that just turned 16.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful girl, super athletic, but I've told that younger generation, I'm like, I just don't think it's healthy for particularly young women to put a tremendous amount of self-worth in the amount of TikTok followers you have or the amount of likes you have, because somebody's always going to have more TikTok followers than you.
Yeah.
But I'm like, and I've said this, I think I've said this on here, I'm like, but even though I felt like I was using social media to put out good content, there's still the narcissistic aspect of it to where I'm like, well, how many likes did I get on that? So I'm like, if I'm going to tell you, I want to show you that I used it for years and years in office. I thought it was a great way to connect, but I'm like, I can't just say it and ask you to do it if I'm not willing to do it myself.
Right, right. Social media glamorizes a lot of things to these young kids who go out and sit and look at it. Sometimes I walk into the room when I go home and visit some of my nieces and nephews, and I got a bunch of kids who landing in the living room floor. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and all of them on the phones. And I'm like, what are you looking at? So tell me what have you thumbing your phone up and down a page for so many hours? And none of them could, just videos.
Yeah.
And so, get up, come on, let's go fishing. let's grab a rod. Come on, let's go fishing. And they say, I don't know how to fish. I'm finna teach you. Let's go and figure it out. You just got to get them out. You got to change their mindset. But like you said, once I got their attention to do something else, they were all for it.
Oh yeah,
they were ready to go.
But you got to provide them to an alternative of what they've got now. And I think I don't have kids, but I think it's just sometimes today it's easier just to give them the phone and let them. Because if they're in the back of the car, they'll quiet down or whatever. Yep. But I'm like, it takes a little extra work, but I think the payoff, I've gotten to be so close to, that next generation of my family, but I have great conversations with them. And I tell people, don't always talk to your kid like they're a kid.
Yeah.
They're very intuitive. They're very intelligent. You can talk to them about adult topics because they've sure been exposed to more than we were when we were kids.
Exactly. I totally agree. I think probably one of the best conversations I had. So the other day I'm coming into work and as I'm walking in the front door, I noticed a young mother walking out and she had on baggy clothes so you couldn't see her being pregnant a lot. But I noticed her walking slow and her hand on her hip. So when I walked by, I said, you okay? And she says, well, I got to get to the OBED. And I was like, well, you're going the wrong way. Well, the young lady at the desk said I had to go around the building to get to the ED. I said, yes, but not the OBED. So I brought her back in with me, went to the young lady at the desk, and she's a young lady in nursing school. And I said, we need to get her a badge and get her upstairs. And then patient guest services rep came over, got the young lady in a wheelchair, took her upstairs. And I stood there and talked to her for a minute. I said, did you understand what she asked for? She said she asked for the ED. I said, no, she asked for the OBED, which means that she's laboring right now. So she's got to walk around the building to get there. And I'm telling what could have happened between with that 100 yards she had to walk. I said, but she could have been on the sidewalk having a baby. Who knows? And then she looked at me like, oh. And I looked down and I saw her books open and steady. And I said, so I'm here to help you. I hope you get through nursing school. Let me know what you need. I said, but when you're here and people come in front of you, I need you to focus on them. And I said, how about you come up to the office and let's just have a chat when you get off from work and see what I can do to help you and see what we can do to make sure that you focus on what you need to focus on when you're here. And she was just so excited to come up and sit and have a chat.
And that is, Ralph, when we talk about if they can't be it, they can't see it. If they can't see it, they can't be it. But you're asking her to give more personal attention to people that come in. But at the same time, you were willing to give her that personal attention. Yep. And there's a thing that I've heard is that you can't give somebody something you don't have.
Yep.
So if you're not if you're too busy to give personal attention, then what makes you think that somebody else, you can say, well, you should do that, but I'm not willing to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. That's one of the things that, and one of the things that drew me to coming to Wellstar was I had heard that our senior leaders permeate a culture of inclusion and making sure that you understand that if we take care of our people will take care of our patients. I'd heard that.
Yeah.
But not till being here and actually being immersed in the culture of Wellstar, it makes it easier for me to really facilitate it because I know that my seniors are facilitating it. So it's one of the things that they truly practice what they preach.
Well, going back to what you made reference to at the beginning of the interview, and I like you, believe in the same thing. I've said, that part of good leadership is making people feel safe, secure, and that their voices are heard.
Yep.
But I've said that if you have to use fear and intimidation to get your desired outcome, that's not good leadership. I wouldn't even qualify that as leadership.
No.
That's bullying.
Yes.
And I've said that, but leading through kindness and compassion, making people feel like they're safe, secure, and their voices are heard, that's sustainable because that builds a sea of goodwill within any organization. And people, you talk about making people feel good about coming to work, that's your workers are going to be more productive in that situation.
Yeah.
I mean, but I hate that sometimes in this world, I think we're being fed more and more by society that you need to have money, power, and fame to be relevant. And I'm like, no. That's not, I know lots of people with lots of that are some of the most miserable people I know. But if you're connecting with your employees in this community you're building, those are things those relationships stand the test of time.
Yeah, that's the basis of transformational leadership to me. When you can tap into somebody's essence and understand exactly what makes them tick, and if it's just being personable and letting them know that you care about them and not just what they do when they come to work for that 8 hours per day, then it leads to a transformation of, yes, I'm here at my job, but I know that we have a mission, and I want to make sure I focus on that mission. And the mission is to make sure I take care of patients the best I can. And what part of my little 15 minutes with that patient that I do that can impact that positive patient experience. When I take that food tray up, I need to make sure I'm smiling, looking at them, asking if there's anything I can do to help them. When I'm mopping the floor, I need to make sure that I just have a general conversation. How are you? Anything I can do to assist you? Just everyone across the full spectrum of healthcare, letting them understand that, yes, you have impact to that patient. Whether you're driving the finances, whether you're mopping the floor, you're feeding them, your contribution to what we do matters. And I make sure that they understand that.
Well, it's really that presence and saying, I see you and you matter to me, and actually meaning that. You can't dial that in. You can't, you can't fake sincerity. But, and well, I will tell you, I know you've got a very busy Monday. Yeah, I hope you're not going to be out there drinking green beer.
Oh, no, sir.
Okay. No, I wouldn't think as a CEO, you wouldn't be doing that.
No, I wish I can't even get home and do it, because by the time I get home tonight, I'd be too tired. Yes.
Well, I will tell you, Ralph, you have been a phenomenal guest, and I think this is the beginning of a great friendship. But as we get down towards the end, there are two questions I always like to ask.
Okay.
Where can people find you and find out more information on Wellstar and CG Health? So
my office is right downtown in the big hospital on 15th Street. I'm on the second floor in the B entrance. Always open to conversations. I tell my folks this: when I'm flying somewhere, if you see me moving, if you call me, I stop, see what you got, unless I'm trying to get to a meeting. And then I tell you, hey, come see Catherine, get on the calendar. As long as I'm open, I'm here. Love conversation with people.
Me too. It's so healthy and fulfilling, and that clicking on your phone is neither of those two things.
No, sir.
So a final question, on a daily basis, what puts a smile on your face and brings joy to your heart?
Oh, seeing patients smile, seeing their recovery, seeing someone that I know came in a state of illness and can barely walk, going out with a smile on their face. The B entrance to our hospital is also our surgical entrance. So in the mornings, I see them coming in to sign in. And then when I leave in the afternoon, I see them sitting out in the wheelchair waiting on the ride to pick them up. And I'll always walk by and say, how was your care? Is there something we could improve upon? What is it? And they always look at me and say, I either get an earful about something that went wrong, or I get a huge thumbs up. And I would say 90% of the time they give me the thumbs up saying, man, I really appreciate what you guys have done for me. So that makes my day go well. If I have a rough day, when I'm leaving in the afternoon and I talk to patients and they give me that thumbs up, that makes the day 100% better.
Well, I will tell you, I've survived cancer a number of years ago. And so people started giving me little things that I took with me, crosses, all this stuff through my treatment, but I still keep them with me every day. So I'm like, I've got to get something to give people. And I give this is St. Raphael or the Archangel Raphael.
Oh, you're kidding.
Which is a prayer for healing on the back. But I give it to cancer patients, but I also give it to leaders.
Thank you so much.
I know you're on board with this because I say part of leadership is about healing the people you serve. Good leadership, we always ought to focus on healing. And I guarantee you, man, in our conversation, you are certainly a healer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This will stay with me. I keep it in my pocket.
Well, good deal. Well, thank you for being a great guest. That's all the time we got. Dropping the mic, and we are out. Hey, guys, thanks for listening to or watching the Changemaker podcast today. Greatly appreciate it. If you're listening and you want to see the video, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Deke Copenhaver. That's pretty easy to remember, I would think. But really, we also want to remind you to like, subscribe, rate across all platforms, download. And if you're looking for a coach, a speaker, or anything, you know where to find me. Just email me at dekecopenhaver.com. And thanks so much for listening.